So, so you got to that point, you started practicing, and then can you chronicle? It'd probably be good for us that if we take your first trip, can you chronicle the deepening of your practice and particularly the embodied dimension of that? So, what happened to your body and to your mind in over the months of the first day, and what happened after you'd come back as well? How did things progress for you?
Yeah, so I would say that I am pretty typical in terms of the Western culture of being very brain heavy, like the brain being a vehicle to carry, the body being a vehicle to carry the brain between meetings. That sort of not really valuing the body as anything beyond just something to carry my intelligence, which I reserved only for the brain. And so that kind of manifested in my mental health, because I would run into problems and I would just think and ruminate and loop, just trying to plan every potentiality. So a lot of my anxiety was future orientated. So, am I good enough to do this? Will I be able to be strong enough to do these sort of things? And then I became anxious, and then had this story about me being weak for being anxious. And so when I started Tai Chi and started exploring the sort of the body intelligence, it was this wonderful reconnection with something that all of us already have, but often don't value as something that can help us with supposedly intellectual problems. And so for me, that was coming into the present moment. So the idea that actually the totality of our organism can help us be effective and act from the present moment without having to plan everything in the future. And so acting from the present moment and having thoughts of, I don't know what's happening next, but coming back, recentering, coming back to the breath, and then just trusting that my body can help navigate the world spontaneously. And so that was really powerful for me. And Tai Chi embodies that. So the kind of idea of being upright and relaxed. So, in Tai Chi, as your students will know, there's kind of imaginary opponents coming from all different directions. And if I was just to imagine I have one attacker in front of me and then someone hits me from behind, I'll fall over and be beaten, versus being upright and relaxed. And if someone comes behind, I'm like a spring, I can then come back to the center. And so, it's just the fact that is accessible was completely new to me, the fact that I could act from the center. And so it's the combination for me of the Tao. What I find wonderful about the Taoist culture is that all the kind of different elements feed into each other. So you have the Tao Te Ching, which is the Bible, the foundational text of Taoism. And then you have Tai Chi, which is, physical embodiment of practice. And they both speak to these same things of Wu Wei is the term that Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching uses. And then Tai Chi, once you have practiced a form enough, your arms begin to move by themselves, as if they're working by themselves, and you're just observing it. This wonderful kind of reaffirmation of the intelligence of the body. It's not just reflexes and instincts. It's the synthesis between the two of the intellect and the body, and they can work together. So that was powerful for me.
And what did you notice about your body over the first year of training? Did you notice you were holding tension in particular parts? Did you notice how your body changed and relaxed over time?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm a kind of a chronic desk worker, and so tight hip flexors and the inability to really get low in any sort of meaningful sense. So like the Chinese squats, most of China, they squat to a number 2, and that was something that I found completely impossible for many months. And then, over time, I could actually go to the loo without holding on for dear life in the pipe.
And that's the real kung fu, isn't it? That's the real kung fu.
Yes. Yeah, you got to be present with it and just, like not judge yourself for, your inability to go to the loo. That's actually, and that sort of flexibility is is in the way that they even do the furniture in China. So, you know, low tables, and you don't have chairs with back supports. And so you're kind of always having to keep upright, and you often sit on the floor cross-legged. And so, yeah, I found an increasing mobility and functionality. And, you know, we are not designed to be in one rigid position all day. And so these kind of practices of Tai Chi can help re-engage these different aspects of our body, and then ultimately help us live with more energy and with less resistance.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. And then just, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about you as an individual, and I'm going to ask about you and your YouTube community in a minute. But when you got back from your first trip in Wudang, you were back in the UK, back in Bristol. What happened? What happened for you before you went out again, which we'll talk about in a little while. But that kind of intermediary period between your two Wudang trips, what happened for you in your mind and your practice back home in the UK?
Yeah, so I went back and quickly needed to go back into work and to, you know, pay off the debts of the trip. So I kind of went into quite an intense business job, and so I was working many hours a week, and kind of, yeah, I think it's difficult when you on the mountain, you're in this wonderful space which is quiet, and you're doing 4 hours of Tai Chi training every day, and you're kind of in this safe space to develop spiritually and physically. And then you come back to the real world, and well, you know, modernity, and you've got all these noisy cities and working way too many hours, and it's difficult to kind of find and hold on to that center that you had connected with. So I would say that I certainly try to keep the Tao alive in me, and that was often done through reading the Tao Te Ching, and probably not as much as I would have done on the mountain, but kind of once a week, and doing Tai Chi. I think I kind of fell out of my practice, as a kind of, yeah, does happen. But I eventually quit that job, and I managed to take the YouTube channel full time. So kind of had the privilege of being able to, you know, explore Taoism and create content for people and create films. So, you know, kind of developing my filmmaking abilities, and be able to do that full time. So I took that decision in 2019, and then I had kind of 6 months to a year where I was kind of at home, but still kind of now getting deeper into the Tao in Britain. And that kind of set the grounds for my return, where I realized I kind of, yeah, was ready to get deeper again, and with some guidance from, you know, going back to not only Master Gu, my Tai Chi master, who's, you know, this wonderful kind of mentor and guide on my journey, but also kind of the energy of the mountain. Is there's a kind of a phrase that Master Gu likes to say, like, Wudang isn't the highest mountain, but it's got an immortal living there, so that's why it's so powerful. So that's Junwu, the god of the Wudang mountains, and there is a definite energy about it. All these amazing temples, different communities, and the culture that is still, you know, had its very turbulent 20th century, but definitely passionate people who care deeply about all this cultivation. And so, yeah, I was ready to return in 2020.
So I've been asking people who teach others about their experience of learning and being taught in China and teaching in other parts of the world. For you, I would like to ask, when you were learning about the Tao, about Taoist concepts and traditions from your master in Wudang, and you are communicating that to an ever-expanding viewership on your YouTube channel, what could you say about that? Did you have to, was there a difference to the language and the way in which Master Gu was sharing things with you, and the way in which you would pass those on? Did you have particular responses from your viewers that were surprising for you as they were trying to connect with Taoist concepts?
Yeah, so I try and see the films that I make and the videos that I make. It's taking people on the journey with me. So like I am the person learning, and the kind of the film or the video that the person is watching is you going on the journey with me, and kind of I am sharing what I've learned, but it's still from the position of someone who's trying to work out life, a young person, and I will ground my videos in my experience. And so I think that is something in particular that people find particularly valuable, is just hearing from another human consciousness. And like there's these abstract ideas in Taoism and Tai Chi, and I think one of the principles of my videos is radically accessible. So it's about trying to really communicate, okay, this is what these ideas have done for me. So here's an idea from Lao Tzu, from the Tao Te Ching, and this is how I've applied it. So that's the kind of the basic way that I approach my videos. And so, yeah, as Master Gu's he's got a wonderful charisma and energy about him. And so in Tea Time Taoism, which is kind of the series that we did together, you know, we'd sit down for a cup of tea and I would interview Master Gu, and then I would kind of write a script, having studied the Tao Te Ching, and then kind of think about how to apply what Master Gu says, and the chapter from the Tao Te Ching, how that applies to my life and how it's been helping me in that kind of given time. So I think that is the kind of the secret sauce, if you will, of why the channel has done as well as it has, because I think it's kind of the synthesis of this kind of, it's not just George on a pedestal, you know, saying this is how the world works, everyone. It's like, okay, here's some amazing ideas from thousands of years ago, and they've helped me. They're still relevant, which suggests that even though the world has changed so much in all that time since, you know, ancient China, that being human hasn't changed, and the wisdom to solve our problems hasn't changed. And so I try and communicate what has helped me in my life, and I think that people appreciate people just saying what is true for them as a fellow human being.
Yeah. Have you found that certain ideas or concepts have really resonated more people? Have you had more feedback from people, comments or messages around certain aspects compared to others?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it. I mean, yeah, you've got the kind of the concept of the Tao, which is the kind of the intelligence that animates our living universe, and you know, kind of everything within it. And the kind of the concept of the Tao, the world, is for the Taoists as an organism, something that kind of comes into being by itself. It's self-creating. You don't need an external power to come in to allocate how many biscuits the English people get versus the French baguettes. You know, it's just, it all happens by itself. And so that can lead to a more kind of compassionate way of being, because there isn't sort of the idea of the chosen people, and there isn't the sort of dogmatic idea that a book from thousands of years ago exactly has described how the world works and who should get what. So there's kind of a humility in Taoism, which I think people really enjoy, because, you know, we don't know how the world works. It is a mystery. And so the opening lines of Taoism is, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. You know, if you say how the world works and X, Y, Z, that's not how the world works. It's too big to be captured with the intellect and with the limited words that we have. And yeah, I mean, I could go on, yin yang, wu wei, so much of it. I'd say in terms of how it applies to our life, I'd say that one video that's done particularly well is on cravings. And so that's chapter 11, I believe. The 5 colors blind the eye. So this is some instruction from Lao Tzu, kind of the idea that if we follow our desires, we'll never get there. And in fact, it kind of dulls us to really enjoying life, because we're on this treadmill of trying to achieve a mirage that fades into the distance. And we kind of all know that for ourselves, that following our desires isn't a game that we can win. And yet, you know, stepping off the treadmill is difficult. And so Lao Tzu has some wonderful metaphors throughout the Tao Te Ching to kind of help us reconnect with enjoying who we are now, rather than externalizing our happiness and our contentment.
Nice. Yeah. And I think the world is currently full of people telling us with certainty how the world works and what we should be doing right. So it's
Yes.
it's great to be doing the opposite of that right now.
Yes, much needed yin to the yang.
Exactly. Yeah.